Today we're going to play with more watercolor and adding texture. So you're gonna go ahead and grab your watercolor tube and you'll see that they are sealed. So when you open the cap, in the top of the cap, there's this little pointed end. You're actually going to turn that cap around and poke a hole through the top foil. Voila. Then you're gonna go ahead and grab your palette, squeeze a little bit of color because it goes a long way, it's very concentrated, and securely close it back up so it isn't dry. Now with the sponge, you're going to use your sponge to get some color and pat the texture onto your sketchbook. Now I will say that before I added any color to my sponge, I did put it in the container of water and squeezed out all the extra water, so my sponge was soft. As you can see here, I zoomed in so you could see a little bit of the texture better. Here I'm dipping it in a different color. And I'm playing with texture. Because I know that these colors work well together, I'm not necessarily washing my sponge every time I change my color. And you'll notice that with the darker colors, it's easier to see the difference. So I'm creating kind of this, I went ahead and I dipped my sponge lightly in the water, and as you could see, because it is watercolor, it will bleed beautifully. So that's another way you can achieve a different texture. It's kind of like a smudged version of the first one. But then if you want, you can actually dip it one more time, squeezing out most of the water. You do not want to soak your sponge because then you end up with too much water. And then you can actually do that. So what we're doing here is that we're creating a background for us to draw, collage on top of. So you could see, you could use your sponge as a painting tool, as a texture tool. Okay, next we're going to experiment with some bubble wrap. You're gonna go ahead and dip your brush in water, grab some of the watercolor paint, and brush on some color on the texture side of the bubble wrap. What we're actually gonna do is create a print of that texture. If you don't have bubble wrap at home, anything else works. Crinkled plastic could work just fine too. Flip it over, press it down onto the page, and there you go. Really cool print. This is diving a little bit into what we call printmaking. So you are printing texture. Next, you're going to try the same technique, but with your sponge again. Instead of dipping your sponge in the color, you're going to brush on the color onto the surface of the sponge. This way you capture most of the sponge's texture without it being flattened on the surface. Yep. You see how you see more pores? There you go.